What is up, my friends? Welcome to Flippin' Bats. The division preview episodes roll on today. We have AL Central, really fun division. A bunch of teams that really could all, spoiler alert, but one possibly win this division. So it will be a fun division as opposed to few years prior when this was just the worst division of all time. Now there are some really good competitive teams that I think can do some damage this year, and a bunch of them could possibly win the AL Central. But interesting division in terms of offseason, what was done, who's going to finish at the top. We will talk all of that. Some big news currently in the game of baseball. Gerrit Cole. Some very, very concerning news with him for the New York Yankees. We will talk about that in just a minute. And also, this is my first episode as an engaged man. Just got engaged last week. Went to Moorea, which is down in French Polynesia, like flying to Tahiti, take a ferry over to Moorea. That's where I was. Elizabeth and I got engaged on the second day we were there. Quick story of how it was done was pooping my pants with traveling with the ring across the country. That wasn't fun. Had it in my backpack in my backpack on me the whole entire time. Got it through TSA. It was nerve-wracking to say the least. Wanted to do it early on in the vacation. So second day we're there. Wanted to plan it around sunset time. So pretended to have a dinner reservation right at sunset so we could get dressed and out the door and ready. And then we're getting ready to walk away. This is the abbreviated version of it. We're getting ready to walk away and walk to our car to go to dinner. But I say, hey, let's go over here on the end of this dock or pier next to our little bungalow and get a picture over there. So walk down there. Everyone had cleared, which was great because I had a photographer go over there and clear everyone out. She says in hindsight, it was really weird that right before sunset, everybody left. So we're walking down there, get to the end of the dock and propose right there at sunset. And that was on day 2 of the vacation. Ended up just from the next day on, we got scuba certified in those waters, saw sharks and sea turtles and everything you could possibly imagine. Swam with octopuses, octopi, whatever you say. But it was truly the most magical vacation of all time. And now I'm back as an engaged man, and that is about the most abbreviated story I could possibly tell of the engagement. I could also tell a 5-hour long story, but I was nervous. I had a whole speech. I had a whole plan. I don't even know what I said. I completely blacked out. I was on top of water, so I was so nervous that I was gonna take out the ring and drop it in the water. So I was focused on that. But all in all, it went smooth. I did end up saying, "Will you marry me?" I know that part happened, and I know she said yes, and that's the important part. And now we're back here in the United States recording episodes as an engaged man. So this is the first ever episode of Flippin' Bats as an engaged man. But what a fun trip. I am very, very tan, though producer Taylor tells me I don't look tan. I do feel it. My back is peeling like crazy. But truly the best vacation. I could not suggest it more. Moorea is where it was. Moorea, it's in French Polynesia. Flying to Tahiti down there, and you take a ferry over to the island of Moorea. There's 118 islands down there, and Moorea is must see. So that's the abbreviated engagement story. Now let's talk some baseball. Gerrit Cole, the big news. Gerrit Cole, according to a source, now Jim Bowden tweeted this. According to a source, Gerrit Cole has been recommended to have Tommy John surgery. Now they are getting a second opinion to confirm that diagnosis, but reports are that Gerrit Cole has been recommended to have Tommy John surgery. This to me just feels like we were just kicking the can down the road. If you remember last year, Gerrit Cole ends up with missing a bunch of time, ends up with the PRP injection, not the same pitcher for a lot of the time, but it just feels like we knew this was coming. Why not do this? It always feels like with these injections that you're just delaying the inevitable. His elbow wasn't fixed last year. We knew it needed to be. His elbow was not fixed. took over 2 months off, ends up getting shut down for a while, and then, tries the PRP injection, which is basically just a stopgap for Tommy John surgery. We've not seen, it clearly doesn't fix elbow problems. It doesn't fix a torn UCL. But what I do believe it does is buys you time. Um, Maybe it's a stopgap, maybe it's a bit of a band-aid on a problem, but ultimately, we've seen if you're having elbow problems and you're getting shut down and you're able to come back from a PRP injection, it doesn't really scream to me that you're going to be fine the rest of your career. And it doesn't ever feel like that his elbow got back to 100%. Unfortunately, this sucks. I mean, Gerrit Cole's one of the best pitchers in the game of baseball. And now, according to a source, he has been recommended to have Tommy John surgery. Um, so that's the news. Yankees situation as a whole. The last thing I want to do here is cry, oh boy, I was right. That's not what I'm saying because I hate injuries. I really like Gerrit Cole as a pitcher, as a person. I like Gerrit. But when it comes to the Yankees, this is what I said. This is why I didn't have the Yankees winning the division. The pitching staff for 2025 got better than last year. Their offense for this year, worse than last year. The team as a whole was not better than they were in 2024. And the pitching staff that did get better with the addition of Max Fried has massive, massive injury concerns. Starting with Gerrit Cole at the top, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball, missed months of the year last year, about half of the year last year. Max Fried, big time injury concern guy. Cy Young potential pitcher when healthy, but injury concerns. Carlos Rodon, big time potential, big injury concerns. In terms of performance, not on that same tier as Gerrit Cole and Max Fried, but can be good. Can also go through some really bad times, but he can be a stud. He can be a top one or two in another rotation when he's going well, but he's also injury concerned. This whole rotation to me you could tell me it has a potential to be a top 3 rotation in baseball, and I'd say, yeah, absolutely, I see that. That means they stayed healthy all year long. The reason I didn't have them winning this division is because I had massive concerns with the rotation, and I do think the offense is going to take a step back this year. So now, already before the year starts, and again, it's not completely confirmed yet, but before the year starts, you're losing Gerrit Cole. And look, there's not a world in which Gerrit Cole is the opening day starter. He is going to miss time. He is going to miss, in my opinion, a big chunk of time. And if I had to guess, unfortunately, I think we're looking at Gerrit Cole missing the entire season, especially if he does end up, the way he misses the season is if he does end up getting this Tommy John surgery that he has been recommended to have. So where do the Yankees go from here with a team that is very good and hoping to be a World Series contender and hoping to run back the division and hoping to get back to the World Series? Where do you go? Well, here's my thoughts. You do not trade your farm system for a top-tier starting pitcher. There's names out there that have been talked about via trade, Sandy Alcantara, Dylan Cease. There are names out there that you could go get and the teams are looking to trade, but you do not now trade your farm system for a top starting pitcher. You laid your bed this offseason. Now it's time to lay in it. Don't make it worse than it already is. And what I mean by that is this team, in my opinion, took a step back. They weren't good enough. They left it at a place where if you get one injury in that pitching rotation, you are screwed. If this offense loses a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, who we don't know what's happening with him, you're in big trouble. It's seemingly like the Yankees have just left this team in a place that was worse off than they were last year. But if everybody in the world is possibly healthy, then yeah, they could be a World Series team. But what are the odds of that happening? Already, last year's AL Rookie of the Year, Luis Gil, arm concerns, arm troubles. What's going on with him? We also don't know if when he's going to return and how he's looking for this season. So many injury concerns. And I just get frustrated with the Yankees because this is not the New York Yankees that I grew up watching. This is not the big bad New York Yankees that go out and do whatever needs to get done. That's starting to feel like the New York Mets. Now the New York Yankees, again, you laid your bed this offseason in a place where you didn't go make that big splash. You did lose your best player. You allowed your best player to sign in free agency with the team across town. You're just you're you're missing the move that needs to be made. Everybody knew this lineup needs let's go get another bat. Everybody was like, okay, Alex Bregman, that team needs Alex Bregman. They just didn't go and accomplish what I felt like they needed to. I said it earlier on in the offseason. And at the time, I was like, there's still so much more time in the offseason to sign more people. And this is after they got Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt. And I said, if you think that you are supplementing the loss of Gleyber Torres and Juan Soto in a lineup with the additions of Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger, you are strongly mistaken. Aaron Judge needs Juan Soto in that lineup. And it's not to say there can't be some other good bats. If Giancarlo Stanton is healthy, he can be good protection. I do like Cody Bellinger, but he's not that same guy that the MVP type player that he was back in Los Angeles. He's really a totally different type of player now, I would say, but has figured out how to get back to putting the ball in play. Good two-strike approach, can hit for some pop. He's a good player for that lineup. Paul Goldschmidt, declining from his MVP days, but can be a good player. But Juan Soto is an all-time great in entering his prime with numbers equivalent to Ted Williams at this point in his career. I mean, these two players are not like the other. Not even one. I'm not even saying, I'm just mentioning Gleyber Torres because he's no longer in the lineup and was good for them in the playoffs. But the big loss is Juan Soto. So unless you did a lot offensively, you are not making up for the player that Juan Soto is. They didn't do a lot. They didn't do enough for that lineup. They did add Max Fried to a rotation. I loved that move, but they left themselves vulnerable to injuries. And now, good Lord, if you lose another pitcher, if something happens to Max Fried, if something happens to Carlos Rodon, Luis Gil, already something happening to him. How is he health-wise? This Yankees team is in trouble. I picked them to finish second in the division. I could easily see it being third in this division behind both the Orioles and the Red Sox, who I do have winning the division in 2025. Talked about that in the AL East preview, which was last week. So again, division previews rolling out. This is the AL Central episode, which we haven't talked about a single one of those teams yet. We have NL Central coming out later this week. And if you haven't yet, go listen to the AL and NL East episodes, which were last week. Really, really good divisions, fun divisions with three, in terms of the NL East, three teams that can easily win the division. In terms of the AL East, 4 or 5 good teams, 3 that I really think are a toss-up to win the division. So a fun division there, but we're going division by division, talking standings, where we think each team ends up, how we think each team did in the offseason, what their big additions were, their losses. And now today we do AL Central, which is a division that I'm excited to talk about because, as everyone knows, I root for the Tigers. I want the Tigers to be good. I get frustrated by the Tigers and their lack of doing that big move in the offseason, but I do think they can be a good team this year. I think the Royals are going to be a good team. I think there's a lot of good teams in this division that can compete to win the AL Central. I don't think any of these teams are going to compete to win the World Series, but I think all of these teams over the last year have really taken a step forward and put themselves in a good position to win the AL Central for sure. And hopefully, when you get to the playoffs, do some damage when you get there. So we're going to start from the bottom up. We're going to talk about each team, how they did in the offseason, some big moves, why I think they finished there. And then at the end, after I go 5 through 1 in the division, we'll talk about the division as a whole and why I think it ends up the way that I did. So we're going to start at the bottom of the AL Central with a team that this is going to come as no surprise. We're not even going to talk about them a ton because they just piss me off. Chicago White Sox, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, are plus 25,000 to win the division. They were the worst team of all time last year. And we're not going to talk a lot about them because the biggest news out of the offseason for the Chicago White Sox is that their front office came out and said, you know what? We are hopeful that in 2025, we can win more games than we did in 2024. You were the worst team of all time in 2024. You didn't do anything in the offseason besides, yes, you traded away Gerrit Cole. Hopefully you get some good return there, over the course of time. But I mean, I look at this team and it is just abysmal, absolutely brutal. It's going to be another terrible year. We are not going to spend much time on the White Sox because they don't spend much time on themselves. Chicago White Sox, dead last in the AL Central, probably dead last in baseball, certainly dead last in the American League in 2025. Fifth place, White Sox. Let's move on to fourth place. In fourth place at plus 210 to win the division, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota Twins offseason involved losing Max Kepler, not really adding much of anything else. So with this team, that if you were to ask me who has the best offense in the AL Central in 2025, man, I probably say the Minnesota Twins. But with this team, it's all about health. And it's about health with the team that has the unhealthiest track record maybe of all time, right? The path, the vision to see the Twins winning the division, I can see it, right? That's why they are, if we're talking numbers, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, the favorite to win the division. But why do I have them finishing fourth? Because I could see the other teams being really good as well. And this team that is built just these are the names that this team is built around offensively. Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis. I think that goes without even saying that to count on those guys to even over the course of a full season, and man, do I hope I'm wrong. I love me some Royce Lewis. I love him as a person. He was one of the first ever guests of Flippin' Bats, by the way. One of the first ever guests, Royce Lewis. I love watching him play baseball. He's an absolute stud, but he is injury prone. Carlos Correa, injury prone. Byron Buxton, injury prone. I would love to be able to take the under here, but ask yourself this. Do you see these three guys combined playing over 300 games this season? If that answer is yes, the Twins could win the division. If that answer is no, they're in deep trouble because they really need those guys. So you add Ty France to a lineup that he's probably going to hit towards the bottom of that lineup in just we're a couple years removed from him being an all-star with the Mariners and hitting, over 300 for that team. But, he's really struggled since. He's just an average hitter. He's not going to hit you 20 homers. But if he can figure it out average-wise, sure, it's another good bat to add to that lineup. But top to bottom, offense, when healthy, the best in the division. But massive health concerns there. So I'm going to put I'm going to put fourth in the division to the Minnesota Twins at plus 210 to win it. Let's move on to third place in the AL Central. I am going to go with the 2024 division winner, Cleveland Guardians. The loss of Josh Naylor will really hurt this team. It will really hurt a lineup that I don't think is going to be all that good. Stephen Kwan at the top. Of course, I like him. Jose Ramirez, perennial MVP candidate. Year in and year out, continues to be the most underrated player in the game of baseball. And I say that every year. How can you say every year that a certain player is the most underrated player in baseball? Well, it's just because he probably plays in Cleveland and national media doesn't give that man the love he deserves. Um, Literally one step away from a 40-40 season last year. Last game of the year gets canceled, so screws him out of a chance to go 40-40, but he will be an MVP frontrunner again this year. AL is loaded, but he'll finish in that top 3 or 4 range. Absolutely. And right on the cusp again of 40-40. Absolutely. But from there, man, really without Josh Naylor, you're searching. I mean, Kyle Manzardo, who at 24 years old will need to be a middle of the order bat for them. In the postseason, he showed it. He showed out in the postseason. He broke out in the postseason. Now, will he in 2025 be a middle of the order type producer for this team? I don't know. It just feels like a lot to put on that guy. Then the addition of Lane Thomas, who once he got to Cleveland was not very good last year. You're hoping for a bounce back from him. Then you're looking at Will Brennan, Bo Naylor, Gabriel Arias, Brian Rocchio. I don't like the lineup. Outside of the top two, Stephen Kwan, Jose Ramirez, Stephen Kwan, who's going to hit over 300, Jose Ramirez, who's going to be a 35-35 or better guy. I don't love this Guardians lineup. And then we move on to the rotation. And look, the Cleveland Guardians, the Cleveland organization is just a arm production factory. They know how to pitch. But color me not impressed by a rotation when I look at how they're going to start opening day on, a rotation of Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, Ben Lively, Tristan McKenzie, Luis Ortiz. Yes, I like some of those arms, but they don't have their certified ace. Shane Bieber, you're expecting back by the halfway mark, and hopefully he comes back from his Tommy John and is the Cy Young caliber pitcher we've seen him before. But are we counting on that? I don't know. So color me not impressed, super impressed with this rotation. Bullpen will be dominant. Bullpen's going to be incredible. Emmanuel Clase in the back end is the front line name, but they have so many good arms back there. But their rotation to me feels like their lineup. There's good talent, but their rotation is missing that Jose Ramirez type of guy on the pitching side of things. So I look at this team, and they do this every year. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were last year. I look at this team, though, and with the loss of Josh Naylor, and with the lack of offensive depth, with the lack of pitching depth in the rotation, I don't look at this team and think, yeah, this is your AL Central winner. So I'm going to have the Guardians coming in third place in the division. Let's move on to second place. Second place in the AL Central, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Royals at plus 280 to win the division. Royals lose Brady Singer in the rotation via trade with the Reds. You get rid of Brady Singer to bring in Jonathan India. So now you add Jonathan India to a top. He's somewhere plugged in at the top of this lineup ahead of Bobby Witt Jr., who is, you could tell me he wins the AL MVP in 2025, and I'd say, yeah, I see that as well. I see that path as well. Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez, again, the middle of that lineup. Lineup depth. I'm frustrated by their lack of doing anything. Man, what a huge step forward they took last year. And heading into the season, I went on and on and on, giving them their flowers of what this team was able to do in the offseason and say, you know what, this is what every team should be out there looking to do. They lost over 100 games in 2023. And they made so many moves in 2024 that I thought, man, this team could be really good. And then they end up being a playoff team. And then their playoff team, baseball, is back in Kansas City. What do they do in the offseason to build on that momentum? And that answer is nothing, really. I mean, that trade, you lose a good pitcher for you and add Jonathan India, who I like, to the top of the lineup. But once again, you're dealing with a bottom of the lineup. Not even bottom, from like 5 down. Your projected lineup's going to be something like Michael Massey, Hunter Renfroe, MJ Melendez, Michael Garcia, and Kai Isbell. I don't love it. I would have loved to see them add a bat somewhere, like a big bat. You need outfield depth and help. Your outfield is currently Hunter Renfroe, MJ Melendez, and Kyle Isbell. Go out and get you a bat like Anthony Santander. And next thing you know, you have an 800 plus OPS guy, a 40 plus homer guy in that lineup. And then you can plug him right behind Bobby Witt Jr. and right there with Vinny P and Salvi Perez. And that's a good, fun lineup. But they didn't do that. They didn't make a big move offensively, which I thought they really needed to do. Rotation will be once again good. Cole Reagans, Seth Lugo, Michael Waka, then like Bubik, Marsh, those guys. So good, but didn't do what they needed to do offensively. In my opinion, to win the division, they will be good. They will be fun. They will compete for the division title. But let's move on to who I have winning the American League Central in 2025. I am going to say is the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers are plus 250 to win the division. I get frustrated with the Tigers. I got frustrated with the Tigers this offseason for not doing, in my opinion, that move that needed to be made offensively. But that does not mean I can't see them winning the AL Central in 2025. Kerry Carpenter showed last year that he can be relied on as a primary middle of the order bat. Riley Green is a primary middle of the order bat. There are so many young names that did show last year and did probably gain a lot of knowledge and confidence by playing in the playoffs and winning some games in the playoffs and beating the heavily favored Astros in the playoffs. Some names that I think proved that they can be good. Smaller sample size, but I really believe Parker Meadows can take a big step forward this year over the course of a full season, hopefully. There are some health concerns there, but Meadows last year, 743 OPS, 109 OPS plus, which is better than league average. I think and this is at 24 years old, I think he kind of figured it out. I'm excited to hopefully see a full season from him. Gleyber Torres addition to that lineup. Two-time All-Star, really good pickup for that lineup. I think he's happy to be in Detroit and out of New York City. He even said, I'm happy to be at a place that I'm wanted, which is a bit of a shot at New York. And this rotation gets me going, baby. Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty at the top. Tarek Skubal, the best pitcher in the game of baseball. Jack Flaherty, just on this show, just said Tarek Skubal's the best pitcher in the game of baseball, but he's going to try and push him for that title. He's going to be a number 2 in that rotation. I really like that pickup again for the Tigers. He was there, got traded away, now he's back. If you haven't listened to the Jack Flaherty episode, he was just on a few episodes ago. I love that guy. He loves himself, the city of Detroit. He loves playing for the Detroit Tigers, and that was so apparent. So after this, go back and listen to it. Stud of a pitcher, stud of a human. Go listen to the Jack Flaherty episode. But he's back in the rotation. Jackson Jobe, absolute stud, will enter the rotation this year at 22 years old, filling the other spots and the depth in this rotation with Casey Mize, Reese Olson, Matt Manning, Alex Cobb. There is depth here as well in the rotation. So I really love what they're going to be able to do with the rotation this year. Bullpen guys, there's some really fun, underrated arms down there. Tyler Holton, Jason Foley, Bo Brisky down there. Andrew Chafin is a lefty. They added Tommy Kahnle. So I like the bullpen. I love the rotation. The offense, I think, I wish added a bat. As many know, it's still a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman, but they didn't end up doing it. I tweeted all off season long. It's a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman. They didn't do it. I look at this lineup and I don't love it, which is where I was coming from in the offseason with my frustration. I think this team, had they added a bat, could compete for the American League title with their rotation the way it is. Offensive depth to me is still missing something. What are you going to get from Javi Baez. And what I mean by that is I no longer believe in Javi Baez. Is he even going to be on the team in 2025? Is Trey Sweeney going to end up the starting shortstop? How can he produce for this team? Big question mark there. Spencer Torkelson. This feels like the ultimate make or break season for Spencer Torkelson. Last year felt like the beginning of that. Like, hey, this was our top pick, top prospect, absolute stud. He was supposed to be better than Riley Green coming up. That didn't happen. Then last year kind of felt like, all right, we need to see it. We need to see it from Torque. This is the year. We have to see it. We didn't. Now this year really feels like for his career, this is a make or break season coming up in 2025. What do you get from Spencer Torkelson? Does he end up your first baseman? Does he produce the way that you've always hoped he would? You can't afford, when you're a team in the Tigers organization that has not been good for a decade, you can't afford to miss on top draft picks. And this year, we'll know whether the Detroit Tigers missed on their top draft pick with Spencer Torkelson. But there are bats, and this is why I still pick them to win the division. Gleyber Torres, Riley Green at the top. I really like that. Kerry Carpenter, stud. I do like him a lot. A lot of pop in that bat. Can hit you 30 plus. Colt Keith, really, when he came up, really took a step forward and really was good for the Tigers in the second half. And then just some really young guys that I think really proved something to me. And I think still do have something to prove. Chase Young, Zach McKinstry, Trey Sweeney, who they got in the Jack Flaherty deal. So some young names that I'm like excited about to see how they step forward in 2025, but that I wish we didn't have to see that. I do wish Alex Bregman was over at third base. I do wish they added an arm or added a bat in the outfield. But they didn't do it. So the lineup to me is fun at the top, lacks depth. Rotation for me, really, really good. Bullpen arms, good. So I think the Detroit Tigers can win the division and will win the division. I think the 2025 Detroit Tigers will win the American League Central. So from bottom to top, we're going to go Chicago White Sox, Minnesota Twins at 4, Cleveland Guardians at 3, Kansas City Royals at 2, Detroit Tigers at 1. This AL Central, I look at it as a whole, and if I were to talk about it as a whole, I would say ultimately it's just frustrating to have 3 or 4 teams that have good talent that could be a threat in the American League that really, to me, just stood back in the offseason and said, all right, we want to win the AL Central. And this is coming from Tigers, Royals, Twins, Guardians. All of those teams sit back and say, okay, we want to win the division in 2025. Let's just keep a close eye on what everybody else in the division is going to do. And none of these teams really went out and, in my opinion, got better from their 2025 season than the Detroit Tigers, which is why I have them winning it. I wish the Tigers would have done more, but the Tigers did get better by adding Gleyber Torres, Jack Flaherty. Those are good moves for them. Add on top of that another year of progression for Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Colt Keith. Color me impressed with what this team can do and how this team can compete in 2025 in the division. But these other teams, Guardians losing Josh Naylor and not really supplementing that in the lineup. Now we're just counting. Now all of a sudden, a team with Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, and then to be able to build on a 2024 season of Kyle Manzardo, who's a top prospect, a young stud at 24 years old. Now we're just, all right, it's your year. We're counting on you to produce behind Jose Ramirez. I don't love that. And then I just feel like you lost that huge production, big time power bat, 100 plus RBI bat, power and protection behind Jose Ramirez, and he didn't supplement that. So I get frustrated. Like, what did you do this offseason? Why was that answer nothing after getting to the ALCS in 2024? So I see a fallback for them from last year. ALCS division champs, ALCS. I see them taking a step back. this year. The Twins left themselves again vulnerable. Good offense, big time injury concerns. Losing Max Kepler didn't do much to add around that. Rotation wise is the same thing. Really didn't do much to add to that rotation at all. Kansas City Royals, massive step forward in 2024. Didn't do much in the offseason to progress. Detroit Tigers, massive step forward in the second half of 2024. Young stars started blossoming. Teams started figuring it out. AJ Hinch worked his voodoo magic. Next thing you know, against all odds, a 0.3% chance to make the playoffs. Against all odds, they do make the playoffs. And they do beat the Houston Astros in the playoffs. And they do something in the offseason by adding Gleyber Torres and Jack Flaherty. So I looked at all these teams, and I think there's 4 that have a chance to win the division. And I thought, you know what? Sure, I was frustrated with the Tigers for not doing more because I want the Tigers to be as good as they can be. I want the Tigers to be a legitimate threat to win the American League. Do I think they are that right now? No, because of the lineup. But I do think they did enough to win the AL Central, and I do think AJ Hinch can take this team and maybe not even have to work as much voodoo magic. Now you have a team that you have a starting rotation. If you remember, last year in the playoffs, literally AJ Hinch's words, we're going to go Tarek Skubal and then chaos. Well, that is what they did. And he freaking pieced it together the only way he can. But now you can go Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty. I can't wait to see Jackson Jobe in 2025. I don't know if he's going to break camp, hopefully, but he's a stud. He will be up in the rotation. And then rotation depth of Reese Olson, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, Alex Cobb, who you signed, Kenta Maeda. There are options there that you don't have to rely on one of those to be really good. You can figure it out. And a bullpen that has good arms. So I like the Tigers to win the division in 2025 because it's really simple. They were the team in the AL Central that went out and got better in the offseason. All the other teams stood pat, and I think they're going to pay the consequences for that and are not going to be playoff teams. I think there's one playoff team coming out of the AL Central. Wait a second. Let me think about that. I haven't put together my full playoffs yet. Let me see if I want the Royals there. We're going to have probably 3 teams out of the AL East, right? So a division winner and 2 of the 3 wild cards are going to go to the East. So then you're looking at 1 wild card remaining for the AL Central and the AL West. So do I like the non-division winner in the AL Central over the Astros, Rangers? Maybe the Mariners can find themselves in that mix literally just because of that rotation. I don't know. If you were to make me pick right now, I would say there's probably one playoff team coming from the AL Central. Maybe the Tigers Royals can get in as a wild card team. We'll see. But it's going to be vitally important to win the AL Central. And I think all the teams that didn't really do much this offseason are going to regret that, not make the playoffs. And I think the Tigers did the most and can win the AL Central in 2025. But I do think it's going to be a fun division. I want to know all of your thoughts. Leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know your thoughts on this. If you're on social media, tweet to me under the episode. Let me know what you think about who wins this division. But really, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment right now. Who do you think wins the division? What do you think is 5-1 in the division? Really 4-1. I know who your number 5 team is, but let me know. I love hopping in the comments and talking back to all you guys and seeing what you all think. But this division can be fun because it will be very competitive. I don't think the World Series champion is coming out of the AL Central, but I do think we can look up at the last month of the year and say there are 4 teams that could legitimately win this division right now. And that's going to make for a fun watch in the AL Central. Ultimately, I think the Tigers win it. This is your AL Central preview with a little bit of Gerrit Cole news in there and a little bit of engagement news in there. So a fun episode. We'll be coming out with the NL Central later this week. If you haven't yet, go back and listen to the last couple of episodes, which is NL East preview, AL East preview, a lot there. Really, really fun divisions. The 2 best divisions Two of the three best divisions, if you throw the NL West in there as well, are going to be the AL East and the NL East for sure. So those are really fun to be able to start with. Go listen to those and see who I have winning from those divisions, because each one was really hard to pick. But this is your AL Central preview. NL Central coming up next. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. And please, feel free to watch on our YouTube channel as well. Every episode we put out comes out on YouTube. Our channel is Flippin' Bats Pod there, and we're on all social media as well. So thank you all for listening. Tigers win the AL Central in 2025. Next up, NL Central preview. Until then, my friends, remember, find your bat and flip it. Peace.